Good characters, bad characters, strong units, weak units. No matter which category an individual Fire Emblem character falls into, at least all of them make sense within their own world. All but one, I'd say. Because Fire Emblem Awakening introduces us to a character that really shouldn't exist. Priam. The more you learn about this guy, the less it all makes sense. So let's not waste any more time and take a closer look at Fire Emblem's most nonsensical character ever. Now, if you have played Awakening but never come across Priam, then I'm afraid I have some bad news. With the Nintendo 3DS's online functionality shutting down in April 2024, he is now unavailable to anyone that didn't previously get him. Priam was the last of the Spot Pass characters, a group of free DLC units added every week or so. Many were Einanjar of previous Fire Emblem games, but Spot Pass also added several paralogs which allowed you to recruit actual characters from the game. Among these are a reformed Walhart and Gangrel, Yenfei from the Outrealms, Zombie Amarin, and finally, Priam. His paralog is the last one in the entire game, number 23, and requires you to have reached the final chapter in order to be accessed. Honestly, this map is almost just as wild as your character you get for completing it. Not only is it seriously hard, definitely a contender for hardest chapter in the game, it also has both the highest number of deployment slots and the highest number of enemies for you to face from turn 1 in the series, at 30 and 50 respectively. Completed and the final paralog boss is all yours, with the title of the chapter already providing a very strong hint at who will be joining your ranks. Paralog 23 is called the Radiant Hero and has a quite bare-bones storyline. Chrom has heard a descendant of the Radiant Hero, which is Ike for those not in the know, has been living in the Garden of Giants and is hoping he'll join their cause. This turns out to be Priam, who accepts that invitation only if Chrom and his army manage to best him and his crew, I guess. Yeah, the game explains away Priam's army as former challengers who decided to stick around, but trust me, the practical problems that come with that are hardly the biggest question mark surrounding him. Because as you might have been able to deduce by now, Priam is, by his own admission, a descendant of the Radiant Hero Ike himself. Let's start with the elephant in the room here. How the hell did a guy whose origins lie in Tellius get here? Strictly speaking, we can't know for certain that the many continents of Fire Emblem aren't connected, but I feel like completely separate worlds has definitely been the intention of intelligent systems behind the scenes. The exception of course is Arcania or Release and Valentia and Valm, which are confirmed to be connected. But perhaps we should start to consider Tellius as part of that as well. After all, while Priam is quite a random addition to the Fire Emblem lore, nothing about him strictly contradicts the story of Tellius, even if he wasn't included in either of the Tellius recollection books, which were Japanese-only titles that dive into the art and design world of the Tellius games and were released in 2016, i.e. after the release of Awakening. This was a possible opportunity to fully canonize Priam if that really was the intention, yet it didn't happen. It is also important to note that Priam is confirmed to not be from the Outrealms, which could honestly have been one of the more solid explanations. But no, that isn't the case. We know this thanks to another DLC battle, the Golden Gaff. In a quote from this fight, Priam wonders whether the Risen fought here are similar to the Risen from his world. Surely if he wasn't natively from the world the game takes place in, he wouldn't say that, right? Tellius also has no enemies comparable to the Risen, so it can't be a reference to that either. So I can't take this any other way but confirmation that if Priam truly is who he says he is, then Tellius must be somewhere on the same planet as Arcania and Valentia. However, that is an interesting question here. How likely is it that Priam is telling the truth? As we just established, the claims of his origin are, geographically speaking, unlikely but plausible, but how about any possible connection to Ike? Well, let's start with his weapon of choice, fittingly called Ragnell. From a design standpoint, the sword checks out, although it does appear a little rusty or cracked. When looking at it from a mechanical angle, there are some inconsistencies here. For one, a defining feature of Ragnell is being able to attack from range using energy blasts, which it cannot do in Awakening. It does maintain the aforementioned range, but instead of cool beams, Priam just chucks the thing. This could be explained away by saying the blessing that allowed Ragnell to fire beams has perhaps faded after a long time, but it could also definitely be seen as a hint that this version of Ragnell may actually be a replica. That would also explain its cracked and damaged appearance. Interesting to note here is that in Fates, Ike appears as an amiibo unit wielding Ragnell. And while this game does retain the cracked model from Awakening, here it is capable of firing energy beams, adding fuel to the fire that Priam's sword may not be the real thing. Priam's version also has durability in Awakening, unlike the real Ragnell, another possible hint at it being a forgery. When further inspecting the man himself, we find that he is also incapable of having Ike's best known skill, Ether. Now, that may be because, mechanically, Awakening ties that skill to the class of Lord, which is exclusively used by Crom, but his daughters as well as Einherjar Ike also have it, definitely making it appear more as if this was a deliberate decision. Now, credit where credit is due, Priam does have Soul and Luna, the two skills that make up Ether, but he lacks the real deal. And speaking of Einherjar Ike, he and Priam actually have some dialogue when they face one another, but surprisingly enough, it is extremely barren. It doesn't acknowledge a possible blood connection between the two at all, and frankly makes Priam sound more like a fan of Ike than his direct descendant. The problem with all these strange inconsistencies though, is that they can all be explained as either signs Priam is incorrect about his lineage, either deliberately or accidentally, or that so much time has passed since the events of the Tellius games that key features of the Ike we know have been lost to time. Hell, we don't even know whether he's Ike's direct descendant. He could just as easily be Mr. Grandson, which would still make him Ike's descendant, but in a way that could also explain these inconsistencies away. There even is a bit of precedent for this, as in the original Arcania games, Marv is hailed as a descendant of the legendary hero Henry, despite him never having children. Marv's family lineage hails from Henry's brother Marcellus, and as such, also eventually led to Crom, Lissa, Emerin, and even Lucina. But similarly, we don't know whether the Awakening Lords are direct descendants of Marv, or whether they might instead be directly related to Elise. Either way, one thing is for certain, Priam was clearly intended to be a reference to Ike from a meta standpoint first, and an actual canonical character second. Awakening was at the time designed to be the final Fire Emblem game, a swan song and celebration of a series that was on the brink of death. It's why the game is set in familiar lands, and features descendants of some of the most well-known and popular characters, which is a category Ike definitely belongs to. Every inch of Priam serves as a nod to Ike, from his outfit to even his name. While it is not super apparent in English, Priam's Japanese name is Paris. This was originally Ike's name during the beta stages of Path of Radiance's development, and is a pretty deep-cut reference as such. His English name was altered, possibly because they thought people in the West would associate the name a tad too much with the capital of France. The connection was not entirely lost upon localization, however. Priam is the name of the king of Troy in Homer's The Iliad, one of the most famous pieces of literature of ancient Greece. He has a son named Paris, and one named Hector. Could it be? No, all jokes aside, Priam is nonsensical enough as it is. He is a weird combination between one of the most obvious if you know characters ever, while at the same time also having to deal with the problem that his creators were too scared or at least unwilling to truly establish a connection. If they really wanted to, they could have created some undeniable connections between Ike and Priam, but they didn't, resulting in a character that frankly just doesn't work and is fundamentally flawed. Normally I would say he is at least bound to never appear again, but Priam was actually included into Fire Emblem Heroes. While new characters from Awakening are admittedly running out, he still managed to sneak his way in before Vake and several child units, so how he pulled that off is beyond me. Either way, considering that Tellius Recollection didn't bother to build up Priam more, I doubt a future potential remake of the Tellius games will, so what we know of Priam now is most likely all we'll ever know, confusing as that information may be. But hey, that's just how I feel. What do you think of Priam? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.